So, you want to be a real estate investor, but where do you start? How do you know what information and sources to trust? That's where I come in. I'm Jonny Cattani, and this is the Investor Relations Real Estate Podcast. Hey guys, real quick, before we start, go to investwithcattani.com and download my free ebook, Is Commercial Real Estate Recession Proof? Now to today's show. What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Investor Relations Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Jonny Cattani, and I'm joined today by Ben Lapidus. Ben is a partner and chief financial officer for Spartan Investment Group, where he has applied his finance and business development skills to acquire the company's current portfolio, build the corporate finance backbone for the firm, and organize hundreds of millions of debt capital. Ben is also the founder and host of the National Best Ever Real Estate Investing Conference and managing partner of Indigo Ownerships. For Spartan, Ben founded and sold a multi-million-dollar study abroad company, worked with several startups through IPO or acquisition. He graduated from Rutgers University with dual degrees in finance and economics, where he founded the Rutgers Entrepreneurial Society. Ben, welcome.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Great to have you on. We had a very awesome off-camera conversation, so excited to get into it. But first, shout out to New Jersey. I actually grew up right near AC. So are you from that area, or why'd you go to Rutgers?
I grew up in Morristown in North Jersey, half hour outside the city. Yeah.
Okay, love that. And now you're in Colorado?
Yep, Denver.
Nice. How did that come about?
Yeah, so met my wife in New York City. She was from Littleton, Colorado, and I knew that New York was not forever. East Coast was not forever, but didn't know where else to go. And I had just visited 6 months earlier before we met. I'm like, yes, absolutely. Let's do that. Life in Denver sounds great.
I love that. We have that in common. That's not a woman was not involved. It was family that was involved for my move, but similar. I was like, the East Coast is not really for me.
Yeah.
Cool. I love it. So we're not too far away from each other, and Best Ever will be right in my backyard next year. So that's
Can't
awesome.
wait. Love Salt Lake.
Let's go back to kind of the beginning here. We got Scott's version of the founding story, but what's kind of your version? What were you doing before, and how did you start Spartan?
Yeah, so I went into school doing finance and thinking I was going to be an investment banker, some type of front office Wall Street job. Worked my ass off to not be considered a back office state school kid, but to be considered a front office financial savant. Had internships lined up at Citi, Goldman, UBS, like all the big boys. And then 2009 hit. So all I was left with was Barclays Capital. They had just bought Lehman Brothers fixed income business. And I got a mid-office job working exotic credit derivatives. And that was a very depressing place to be, which I'll just kind of gloss over that. So decided to shift gears with my life and go to Costa Rica that summer between sophomore and junior year. By consequence of that trip, I spent a month down there and identified an opportunity for, just like a small hustle. I wanted to practice my entrepreneurial skills. I just started this club at Rutgers called the Rutgers Entrepreneurial Society. And I ended up founding a study abroad company for environmental engineers. It was 2009. Obama had just been elected. Green wave was starting. We were going to produce renewable energy education content. Costa Rica was the only place in the world at the time that had renewable energy facilities of every type, all within a half an hour's drive of each other, valued education to the point they provided it for free and were non-litigious, meaning you could send a kid to the top of a 40-foot wind turbine, no legal issues, and it was free. So we built a program around that. By the time I had graduated college, 2 years later, we were doing about 500 kids a year at $4,000 a pop. So I had a $2 million business at 22 years old. I had partners who were also 22 years old. Ego and hormones got in the way, so that fell apart really fast. My cut helped finance my first 2 residential real estate properties. I ended up working in big data in ad tech for one of the first unicorns in tech in 2012 in New York City. The company IPO'd 6 months after I started, made a bunch of VPs in my circle a lot of money. They started throwing cash at me because they heard I was doing 20% cash on my single families. Ended up acquiring, in addition to a multifamily, I syndicated over 50 units by the time I was 50. Used that to build up my net worth, bring that to the bank, leveraging other people's investment. So I would just take 25% with no money in, and that impacted my balance sheet. So I went from like a 0 to a $500,000 net worth on other people's dimes. took that to the bank and was able to start doing bigger deals. So around that time, I met my wife, moved out to Denver, started the Best Ever Conference so I could network and on a national forum, find who eventually ended up being my partners. And we started attacking this lovely commercial real estate asset of self-storage in 2016, early 2017. And it's been a great ride since then. We've acquired $500 million assets, and I've really enjoyed building our portfolio from the ground up, both on the acquisition side and on the capital market side.
Gosh, I love that. What an incredible story. And I know a lot of people know the Spartan story. It's you guys are kind of that household name, as obviously well-deserved. So kind of talk about what was the idea behind Best Ever? You know, what was there a need that you saw, as you know, you did with your early efforts as well?
Yeah. So what I saw in 2016 was that there was a lot of content out there, a lot of podcasts, a lot of books, a lot of different mediums, YouTube channels circling around real estate. But every event, in-person event that I went to was not a lot of fun. It was one person on stage for 2 days straight, inviting all of their vendors and peers and clients to talk about how amazing their program was. There's one way to skin a cat. There is one way to get rich, and they hold the magic secrets. And for $120,000, they can show that to you. So that didn't really resonate with me. It wasn't what I was looking for. It's a valuable thing to offer to a particular avatar, but it's not what I was looking for. I was looking for a trade event, a place where people who already had some experience in real estate investing could come together and advance their knowledge, network with each other, get deals done. So I envisioned an experience that did not have something directly to sell. And I had this experience building a study abroad company, 12 days, all inclusive. Every 15-minute interval was scheduled from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. when the parties were done, 11 days in a row. I had that experience running a phenomenal experience for people. So I knew that I could build an experience as well. And I didn't know if it'd be phenomenal, but I knew that I could build an experience better than others. And I had been friends with Joe Fairless of Ashcroft Capital, who has the Best Ever podcast. I had been his first mentee in syndicating my first apartment building. And so 4 or 5 years later, when I moved to Denver, I said, hey, Joe, you got this podcast. It's been awesome. You got this audience. That's awesome. You've been interviewing somebody every single day. You know, great speakers. I want to launch a conference in Denver. And he said, great. That's been on my to-do list for this year, but I've not done anything for it. So we partnered up. He did all the marketing and sales, and I put the event together. And 7 years later, we've maintained our standards of having diversity of thought on stage, building community, increasing collisions per capita to foster transactions and partnerships. I'm really proud of some of the companies that have blossomed out of Best Ever, including Spartan.
Absolutely. That's incredible. And obviously explains where the Best Ever name came from. I love that. That was an easy one to put on there then, I guess, if you're partnering with Joe Fairless. Yep. I love it. Exactly. And I love that concept because, and listen, the content's incredible. The speakers were amazing, but man, that networking that you can do at Best Ever was just, I mean, ironically enough, here I am working on a self-storage deal and I met my partner at Best Ever. So hopefully one day I can stand on that stage and thank Best Ever for that, which would be awesome. And we love delicious irony. So
I love that. I'm going to put another one on my belt, another notch on my belt, another
Please
company
do.
started
Please
because
do.
of the Best Ever conference.
Absolutely. Awesome. So you guys are obviously rolling right along. You just launched the fund. I do want to touch on a little bit. Scott and I couldn't talk too much about it because it hadn't quite launched yet. So kind of talk about really quick, just kind of the idea behind it. And then, you know, what it looks like in terms of kind of operating that.
And just to be clear, you want to talk about why a fund versus deal by deal, or
yeah, kind of your thought process for the multi-asset fund as opposed to deal by deal.
Yeah, I think the fund was always the desirable outcome. We didn't want to have capital deployment risk, meaning that we didn't want to collect a bunch of cash and not have the pipeline, the deal flow to deploy it. So 2020 was really our proving ground of being able to do a regular volume of transactions to build the team to identify, process, close, and perform on those assets. 2021 was a huge scale year, kind of got away from us. And now we look back on it and we say, wow, this is some pretty complex accounting. Not only do I have to manage a massive amount of investor data because I've got the same investors associated with all these different entities, but I have to do all of this cost sharing. I've got somebody on payroll that's running around to 4 different facilities, and I got to track their time so that I'm allocating their payroll correctly to all these different individual assets. And a fund kind of cures all that. It makes the capitalization a lot less complex. It makes the management of operating expenses a lot less complex. It makes the management of data for optimization and an asset management perspective and business intelligence a lot more advanced. And it provides a better hedge. And when we talk about hedge, I think a lot of people think, diversification. I don't want diversification. Warren Buffett doesn't diversify. He makes big bets on one thing, and there's no diversification there. We're not talking about diversifying outside of an investment thesis. We're talking about diversifying inside of that investment thesis. Investors are still investing in self-storage and secondary, tertiary markets with value add opportunities. That is the investment thesis that we have. And so being able to say, okay, well, if one deal maybe underperforms a little bit, another deal is neutral relative to targets, but we've got 3 other deals that are doubling performance, which is more or less the allocation of our performance. We have 1 or 2 properties out of 50 that are underperforming by 10% from targets. And I know they're going to catch up. But as of right now, the investors who are only in those 2 deals are not benefiting from all of our other deals where we're 20, 30, 40, 50% overperforming on. So
makes perfect sense. And so, I was kind of doing a little research on it. It's about I think you guys put 4 to 5 year hold. What's sort of the exit strategy there? Is it sell to a big institution, unwind it? What are kind of the ideal exits there?
Yeah, you kind of learn in the startup side of things. It's not real estate focused. Like if you're building a tech company or just any business in general, that if you limit your vision to one exit plan, that you've got tunnel vision and you're closing your doors before you even kind of get started. So we underwrite for as many exit strategies as possible, and we want to stay flexible to respond to the macroeconomic conditions and the potential trends. If there's an opportunity to roll up a portfolio based on a market and sell to an institutional partner, awesome. If there's an opportunity to do brand consolidation with another group and we can acquire them, we just want to be available to execute on as many exit strategies as possible. I know that the commercial real estate industry as a whole, every podcast I'm on asks these kind of questions, likes to talk about exit strategies because investors want to know how they're going to get the money out. We like to not talk about exit strategies so that we can say, here's the 10 ways we could get your money out, and all of them are available to us, which gives us more tools in our tool belt to get the maximum IRR.
Gosh, I love that so much. It's so true. And certainly, that's why I want to touch on it real quick because it just came out. Like I said, Scott wasn't able to give a ton of info. So selfishly, I wanted to. I'm not even going to pretend.
Talk all day.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. And we can. But I want to get to more in-depth stuff for sure. So thank you for that. I appreciate you shedding that light because, of course, it's important to outline for those that are new. Do not focus on one exit strategy. Don't be like, yeah, we're going to sell in 5 years and that's it. Because you don't know what it's going to look like in 5 years. You may have to hold on to it longer. There's so many different things, but it's still important to, like you said, underwrite all of those so that you have that vision in case, the first 5 aren't available and you have to go down to 6 through 10 or whatever it may be. So love that. Awesome. So you're a very outside the box thinker, for a lack of better terms. We were discussing offline about some of your thought process and how you apply those to business. And that's really what I want to focus on. So let's kind of get into that. We talked about, essentially, as you put it, consuming Renaissance content to expand our economic theories. Talked about using quantum mechanics and physics and different things. So touch on that. What content are you consuming that's giving you this? And then, what are some applications that you apply it to?
So I love the quote. I forget who said it. It says, show me what a man or woman reads and I'll show you how they think. So in an effort to surround myself with like-minded Socratic thinkers that I can use as sounding board, I've actually put all of my favorite books that I've read online. So if you go to benlapidus.com, you can see everything that I'm reading and that I've liked. And if I start a book and I don't like it, I don't put it on there. But I think that we have a tendency in particular, I started off when I graduated school, wanting to be that tech entrepreneur, the next Zuckerberg. Right? I was in that mix that responded to the GFC and not having a job by saying, great, I'm going to build my own job and change the world. Social, local, mobile, all those wonderful things. It didn't really resonate with my superpowers. And then I found the investing world, specifically real estate syndication. But we have a tendency to kind of regurgitate the same books and the same content. And a lot of people talk about Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And well, that was an awesome book. That book is from like the 70s. Like, how is it still relevant today? I mean, I love the message overall, but tactically, you're not going to get too much from it that's going to be helpful today. So, I try to read all of the awesome leadership, philosophy, human nature books that come out today, as well as, your kind of technical real estate books, if I find them to be advanced enough. But really, I'm spending most of my time reading about subjects that I find interesting, like policy and anthropology and physics and biographies and economic history. And what I've learned over the last 4 or 5 years is that ideology frames a lot of what's happening in our reality. And what I mean by that is the human species is an organism all on its own, and it is evolving over time. And our collective consciousness has a way to help us predict what's going to happen tomorrow. So whether it's Marxism or capitalism or communism or Catholicism, whatever your religion or your ideological persuasions, that conversation that's happening around the world about what we should believe and how we should evolve as a species is helping predict tomorrow. And as an investor, I'm pretty concerned about what's going to happen tomorrow. So the more I read about how we got to our economic tools today, like what was the pattern to go from, where we were about knowing nothing pre-Adam Smith in mercantilism to all the way through Keynesianism and what we're doing today, the more I learn about how we went from Newtonian physics to, quantum physics and gravitational physics in a post-Einstein era, helps kind of piece together who we are as a species. So a good example of how I can apply some of these, what I'll call Renaissance content that's from outside the real estate, and I apologize for the long answer here, into real estate is, an example that I mentioned offline was the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. In quantum physics, there's this idea that information is limited. There is a limited granularity to the entire universe. You cannot go farther than the Planck constant, excuse me, if you're German. You cannot go farther in granularity to the Planck constant. And when you get that far down, when you get past kind of the quark level of all that makes up our subatomic universe, there is a limited amount of information. You can either know the placement of something or you can know the velocity of something. The more you know about the placement of something, the less you know about its velocity. The more you know about the velocity of something, the less you know about the placement, which means at a quantum level, we can't observe this, but at a quantum level, we have no freaking clue where anything is or where it's going. There is a limited understanding as to all that is. Like there is a 99.99 infinitesimally 9% probability that I am sitting in this chair right now, but it's still not 100% certainty because the particles can just be macerated instantly. So all that to say that whenever somebody talks about anything concretely, the idea of imposter syndrome, that you kind of grow up into a career that you don't feel like you're prepared for. Doctors don't know what they're talking about. Pilots don't know what they're talking about. Governors and presidents don't know what they're talking about. Men of the household don't know what they're talking about. They do, but nobody knows everything because information is limited and our ability to process it is limited. And that limitation is coded into the nature of our reality. So when I hear something or I learn something new, I always approach it with that question, that question-minded perspective of what about this is true and what about this is not true, because there's a component to that to every single statement. And it helps me kind of filter information that I can use to create the best investment thesis for a particular asset or time period. Very long-winded answer. Hope that helped.
Wow. We're actually just going to end the podcast. It's over, guys. Thanks. Wow. That's incredible. Okay. I am going to humbly admit that a little bit of that was over my head.
Which means I need to practice talking about it if I'm going
Well,
to keep
no,
talking about it
yeah,
on podcasts.
I mean, you're very intelligent, and I think everyone, 10 out of 10 people will say that. So, my question then, I guess, would be from that is, due to that, so does that, if humans don't understand that or aren't willing to accept that, is that where the sort of collisions are happening with, different ideologies and different thought processes? Is that kind of leading to that, where someone thinks they know so much versus the other person, but in reality, they obviously don't, according to your theory here?
Well, so there's something called the Dunning-Kruger effect that was analyzed and found by two scientists, Dunning and Kruger. And the concept is the less you know about something, on average, humans tend to feel more confident in their subject matter expertise. And the more they know about something, the less confident they feel. And so as you come to the brink of human understanding about something, you've learned so much that you realize there's so many unanswered questions. And that's why fields of study exist. The less confident you feel, the more you're going to hedge in the way you talk about things. And the less you actually know, you kind of have this feeling that you have a mastery of the subject matter because you've kind of plugged in that very limited understanding of that subject matter into your universe, and you've made it make sense to you, you've rationalized it, you can tend to be more confident about it. And so when you hear somebody talking very confidently, and I'll just kind of throw both of us under the bus here, white men kind of typically do that a lot.
Yep.
Where they don't
Mansplaining.
use words. Yeah, they don't use words that kind of hedge their understanding of something. And then you kind of see scientists saying, like, there's a 99% certainty that global warming exists, right? Like, they never say it's 100%, and it makes it very easy for those that are talking heads to be like, how come the scientists don't know anything? It's like, well, because the nature of our reality is coded with limited information and a limited ability to know things for certain. And so it kind of helps in interpersonal dialogue to be able to assess somebody. How intelligent is somebody? How much should I trust who they are? Because everything that we know is just trusting information from somebody else. And our ability to assess the relevance of that information to our lives, to our perspective, to our understanding of other things outside of that conversation is really important. It's how we derive all of our judgments, all of our discernments that help us navigate our future.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. That's a really, really awesome perspective. So how do you apply that then? And let's say, meeting someone new for the first time, for instance.
Yeah. Well, so I do listen for those confidence statements, things that like that somebody says, like, this is a certain way, it always has been a certain way, always will be a certain way. Or I'm a very inquisitive person. I ask a lot of questions. I annoy the heck out of pretty much everybody that I meet that I find interesting. And so if I ask a question and there is no answer to that question, but the person doesn't automatically say, that's an interesting question. Hadn't thought of it that way. They kind of just tell me how it is. I don't find that relationship continues typically. I enjoy people who identify that they are always learning as well, and that part of our entire experience is to try and push our understanding of our reality as far as we can while we're here. Because at the end of the day, behind all of this investing is a means to an end, which is living a good life. And behind living a good life is this desire to have some kind of meaning. And to me, that meaning is derived by trying to understand the nature of my reality and the purpose of our species. So I enjoy people who, to at least some extent, can appreciate that perspective and who are also just as inquisitive to kind of push their brink of understanding of all things.
Wow. Yes. No,
I'm getting a little heady. I got a little heady with you like 8 minutes ago here.
I love that so much. It's so true, because I've been asking why. I mean, ask my parents, why? I mean, they'll tell you, they're like, I don't think I've ever heard anyone ask why so many times. And because I always want to know from a young age, why is this like this? Why is this like this? Why is this like this? And it's so funny too, because now you get older and you realize your parents probably didn't know that much. And so you're getting quote unquote mansplained by your dad, because of course that generation was not open-minded, right? They're not going to admit they don't know anything. So he grew up on a farm in Idaho. So, he knows everything, but
I I've read some
And
books about
so, so you look back and you're like, oh, okay, well, yeah. I mean, and listen, like, of course, no parent wants to be like, I actually don't really know, but we're getting off on a tangent here. But yes, I love that as well, which is honestly one of the reasons I started the podcast, because then I get to have people like you on who are, like you said, you don't know everything, of course, limited amount of information, but do know more about me, especially on the topic of self-storage. And so now I get to absorb that by asking questions. So my next question for you is, when you do have a question, do you try to break that question down to its very core, or do you just straight up ask the question that's right on your mind?
I don't know that I understand. What do you mean by break it down to its core?
So if you have an abstract, the perfect example right here. Ultimately, when you have a question about something, I guess I'll ask this first. When you have a question about something, do you go do your own research first, or do you try to find someone who knows a good amount about that topic and ask them first?
Yeah, I think leaning into one skill set is important. So my answer is not going to be correct for everyone, and I will kind of reference a white paper that I read once about there's visual learners, audio learners, kinesthetic learners. Everybody knows that, and that there was this white paper that I read was kind of assessing how different presidents receive their information briefs, and how some got it the way that they should and some didn't, and that impacted their decision-making ability. And so I am very much an audio learner. My reading comprehension score on my SAT was 640, which is a decent enough score, but got nowhere close to my math score. So my reading comprehension is not very good. So my wife makes fun of me all the time that I can't Google search for shit. So when there's a question to answer, she'll be the one to Google search it, and I'll be the one to call up the veterinarian and be like, hey, what's your hours, instead of just going on Google Maps and looking at it. So I do typically tend to kind of need a little bit of assistance getting an answer that I could probably find on my own. But when I'm learning about something, I typically like to find a thread that's interesting. And so I might be poking around by asking 3, 4, 5 questions to try to find the angle that helps me pull that thread. And then once I have that thread, now I'm diving deep. Now I'm learning about rocket science or whatever it is.
Right.
But only after I've kind of found myself at a superficial level of having an understanding of what we're talking about and an ability to ask the intelligent follow-up question. So I do like to keep my I learned in the New York City dating scene back in 2014 that I am not entitled necessarily to answers to very intimate questions in the first 5, 10, 20 minutes of meeting someone. So, instead of asking, what's your definition of God or something, I might say, what do you want your next adventure to be? And you can answer, I want to go to Thailand. Or you could also answer, I want to fall in love. And either one of those are acceptable. And the one who answers the second one's like, great, that's something for me to latch onto. Let's talk about that. I want to know more about who you are.
I love that. The only reason I'm dying laughing is because, I have a girlfriend now, but when I was dating, I was like, and this was internet, right? So this is like internet dating time, of course, everybody knows apps, blah, blah, blah. And so, you might have 2 or 3 dates scheduled in a, 10-day period, let's say. So it wasn't uncommon for me to sit down and be like, okay, what's your childhood trauma?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Which you kind of look for in interviews, right? So now that I've got a team of people and we're growing and we're interviewing 10 people a week, it's like, all right, I got 30 minutes to assess your body language, your experience, your background, and if you're a good culture fit. And if you share our values. And what's the right way to do that where I'm not entitled to, like you said, your childhood trauma, but I can understand, who you are and what makes you tick and what makes you motivated. And can I meet your personal goals? It's difficult to do that in a 30-minute, 60-minute window. So yeah,
Absolutely.
Being a good questioner is a really important skill.
Absolutely. And that's why I asked that kind of original question, because certainly you can ask such a general question, or again, you can, but that's like you said, you'll ask questions. And then once you get that thread, and that ultimately answered my question, is you'll ask enough questions so you find the thread that you're like, okay, that's actually what I wanted to know. Boom. Now I can pull that and get the correct answers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. Well, we're getting close here, but I do have 5 questions I ask all of my guests.
Sure.
It's the final 5. So, first question: best advice you've gotten from a mentor.
Best advice I've gotten from a mentor. I needed this at the time, but chase fun. So do we have time for me to drill down into my explanation answers? Yeah. All right. So I remember reading a book by Eric Ries called The Lean Startup Machine. And there are other books that reference this concept, but a successful business entrepreneur is somebody who can find the intersection of 3 things. One, something that you're passionate about, meaning that you enjoy it, something that is economically viable, meaning that you can make money at, and something that you're the best at. Sometimes the things that you're the best at are not the things that you enjoy, or vice versa. So finding the intersection of those 3 things are really fun. And I've had different chapters. I kind of had a strange upbringing, and my parents really focused on the economic viability of my life and the economic viability of my decision making, and kind of left out those other 2 more so than the economic viability of my future. And so when I started that study abroad company, one of my 3 partners was somebody who was in the back half of their life, who owned a hotel in Costa Rica and had built a life around chasing fun. And so just working with that person for a 3-year period and learning that I'm going to be more successful, I'm going to be more economically viable if I identify these other 2 components of who I am and find a business plan that matches that. And if I don't chase fun, if I don't find something that I'm passionate about, that I won't wake up and enjoy every single day and kind of lean into my shiny object syndrome as opposed to trying to avoid it. If I don't lean into my ADD, which is just a natural part of who I am, I'm going to be struggling and swimming against the current the whole time. So don't just chase economic viability, chase what you enjoy. Don't just chase your passion either. Make sure it's economically viable.
Wow. I love that. I was having this exact conversation actually last week with a good, well, he's now a good friend. We just met. It was a river trip for my buddy's bachelor party, and he's struck. And not that I have anything figured out by any means. So, but I basically just told him, I said, you got to find that point where you are enjoying it. And, like his thing was snowboarding, right? He loves snowboarding. He's an incredible snowboarder. Couldn't quite make it as pro, but I was like, think about all the things that are involved in snowboarding. Somewhere in there is some way that you can stay involved in snowboarding and be economically viable, right? And it's like, you don't need to do right? Like if you create something that every snowboarder needs, now you get to go snowboarding, right? So I love that so much. That's such a great answer. What is it about your career that makes you feel like you're fulfilling your why?
I mean, I'm 32 years old, so I don't know that my career is fully baked yet, but I've thought about my life in 2 phases. One is to provide every opportunity that I can make available to my family members, the people that I love. And then once I feel like that is satisfied, is to mobilize massive resources to shape the world as I see fit. And I am not like a billionaire hater on that front, despite having some progressive views. And I'm not a government hater either. I think everybody's just trying to do their best to produce the best possible world, and everybody's got different ideas of that. So what I like about what we do at Spartan is that we get to change lives. I know that sounds corny, and that's our tagline and everything, but our BHAG, our big, hairy, audacious goal, Jim Collins' concept, is to create wealth for every employee at Spartan and 100,000 active investors. And wealth is intentionally vague. It's not necessarily monetary. It could be, having your own farmland in Costa Rica. It could be reading 1,000 books, or, whatever, like fulfilling that dream to sail around the world, whatever wealth means to you. And we put our people first before our investors, which we have in everything: our mission statement, our vision statement, our BHAG, everything. Our people come first because that's the only way that we can satisfy our investors' needs. So the idea that we can help shape the people who work here's future is really exciting to me. And that's kind of satisfying that next step. I don't get to practice my analytical skills as much as I used to. And I do miss that sometimes. I like to be a producer and an innovator, and to be a tinkerer in the garage with, different financial products that we're creating. But right now I'm really enjoying growing as a leader and nurturing our team members and helping them learn more about themselves and about their work and about their relationship to their meaning and their lives. that's become really fun for me.
I love that so much. You guys are so aligned over there. It's very inspirational because Scott's answer was somewhat similar. Obviously his own perspective on it, but very much like, it's obviously he's the CEO. So for him, it was like, hey, I'm, the buck stops with me. So I have to be that leader. And you basically just said the same thing. So I love that very much. That's awesome.
Cool.
Wow. This will be an interesting answer. Favorite non-real estate or investment related book?
How many can I offer?
Give us 3.
All right. So I'll give you authors. Yuval Harari has a trio of books that kind of expand the perspective of a human being. So like most of us think in terms of 3 generations, because that's what we've witnessed. Some of us kind of think in terms of 5 generations back to the Civil War, because that's what our grandparents told us stories about. So it feels more visceral. None of us are thinking about the fact that Homo sapiens eradicated all the other Homo genus 12,000 years ago, and what the implications of that were. Why are we even an agrarian society? And how does that shape tomorrow? Like, what is our agenda now that we no longer have to deal with disease and famine and war to the extent that we have in the past? What is our agenda as a species, and how will that shape our tomorrow? So Yuval Harari has got 3 books. The first one's called Homo Sapiens. The second one's called Homo Deus. They're both amazing. I will also recommend Carlo Rovelli. He is an Italian gravitational loop theorist that makes the physics and the nature of our reality not only accessible to the layman who has no background in it. I haven't taken a single physics course in my life in high school or college, but also makes it very romantic. He writes in a way, especially the audiobook, the particular narrator just makes it, you go for a run, you watch the birds, you see the trees change, and you listen to this book about the nature of your reality. And it just makes you fall in love with the concepts of physics. And then those concepts can be applied both mathematically to an investment thesis, as well as to like your perspective on how you navigate life. Only because I'm blanking on another one, I'll just leave it at those 2 for now.
Beautiful. I love that so much. I've heard incredible things about Homo sapiens. So that's a good one. Something kind of maybe not that similar because I haven't read it, but Ishmael was kind of a book like that for me. If you've read that by Dan Quinn.
I haven't. No, I'm gonna look it up.
Not nearly as long. Homo sapiens is really long, right? If I understand correctly, it's like pretty
long.
Yeah. Cool. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
This is kind of thematically in line with me, but the ability to there's a character in the Marvel series. I used to read lots of comic books when I was 10, 11, 12 years old. It's called Molecular Man. He had the ability to just change the molecular structure of anything. So it seems like the most powerful thing that I could think of.
That is, you're right. That's on par. I love that so much. That's awesome. And I love that that's what you would want to.
I mean, all the other superpowers can be achieved if you can change the molecular structure of anything. You can fly, you can go invisible, you can telekinesis.
That's a fact. I love it. Awesome. Last one. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you and learn more?
Yeah, you can check out, find me on benlapidus.com. You can hit me up at the Best Ever Conference by attending March 8th through 10th, 2023 in Salt Lake City. You can hang out with John and myself in Salt Lake at the Best Ever Conference. And then you can just reach out to me, Ben, at spartan-investors.com.
Ben, I cannot thank you enough. This has been incredible. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching today's episode. I hope you really enjoyed it. Listen, I know it's cliche and you hear it all the time, but please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you know when the next video is coming out. Even though this is technically a daily podcast, you know it's coming out the next day. We have a ton of content coming your way. So please like and subscribe. It helps a ton. Leave comments. Would love to know what you guys think. And we will see you on the next one. Thanks so much.